It's always weird. And there's always something new to talk about in Florida. In fact, I sort of like, when I fly into Florida, I'm sort of worried about reading the paper. Every time I come to Florida, you guys have some new obsession that you're into. Are you still putting the drag queens in prison? You still doing that? That's still going on? Still got that law in the books? How about the bathrooms? You have those dick and pussy sheriff's deputies staring at the urinals, making sure everybody's in their correct biological toilet. Are you doing that?
Yes, amphetamines.
I've heard it, I think that's still in the books, right? You're doing that. Yeah, you're actually doing that. You know what made me realize, though, that Florida is different? I mean, not just different, totally different from other states. At some point, the government of this state decided to sue Disney. What? Are you insane? Do you know how many people have tried to sue Disney? Well, first of all, obviously Disney deserves to be sued, because what have they done for this part of Florida over the past 50 years? Just create a lot of traffic, right? What a bunch of freeloaders, let's get rid of them. But have you ever met a Disney lawyer? I mean, really? I mean, I have. If you're trying to sell a Donald Duck plush toy for $3 at a flea market in the ghetto, the Disney lawyer will show up and confiscate your inventory and threaten you with jail. I mean, all right, here's the best example. This is the best example about Disney. At Disney World, one year, not that long ago, an alligator ate a 2-year-old boy. Disney lawyers had that cleaned up in a week. They just backed a semi full of $100 bills up to that family's house and said, "Don't worry, we have more, and you get lifetime lightning lanes at the park." So I'm sure they added something like that into, when you come back to Disney, we're here for you. So anyway, here we have the state of Florida suing Disney. So in this corner, ladies and gentlemen, Tommy Lee Struthers, former running back for the Seminoles, representing the state of Florida, now the Assistant District Attorney for Pinellas County. And in this corner, representing the Disney Corporation, William Madison Harrison, formerly the Chief Judge at the Bosnian war crimes trials. I mean, that's going to be brutal, right? Anyway, I had to get that off my chest. It's just like something I wanted to talk about. All right. Anyway. So, how about them Rays? See, nobody supports the Rays, even when they're good. You don't care, do you? Because you came from Cleveland. It's still rooting for Cleveland. Or you came from Boston. Or you came from, Detroit. I don't know where. But you don't support the Rays. Okay. They're 12-14 this year. They're not that bad. And they always say it's a deceptive 12-14. They always say that when you're 12-14. But if 3 of those hits were different, they would be 20-4. But they're 12-14. All right. See, I can make jokes about the Rays because my team is the Texas Rangers, and the Rangers. Here's how bad this is. The Rangers actually won the World Series in 2023, and nobody noticed. I mean, seriously, remember that year everybody was pulling for the Cubs because they hadn't been to a World Series in 100 years or some galldarn thing? Whole nation is pulling for the Cubs, and it was a big national story. So the Texas Rangers get to the World Series. They've never been to the World Series. Never. They've never even been close to the World Series, even a single time. Everybody goes, that's sort of cute. Nobody cares, and so the 2023 World Series does set a record. The lowest TV ratings in the history of the World Series. Nobody had seen TV ratings that low since the last season of Here Comes Honey Boo Boo. And the Rangers played the Arizona Diamondbacks, and everybody went, you know what? I think I'll just play Minecraft that night or something. Nobody watched the games. If you had a trivia contest, and one of the questions was name a player on the 2023 World Series championship team, only people working at ESPN would be able to answer that question. So Anyway, now this is an important question. I want all of you to think about it before you answer it. How many of you are planning to celebrate Walpurgisnacht with us next Friday night? Okay, you're lying because you say you're going to do it and then you don't do it. Every year I try to get everybody to celebrate the second Halloween, Witches' Night. And every year, nobody shows up. Come on. It's alcohol, debauchery, and witches. Why aren't we all partying all that night? I can't get that thing exported from Germany to the United States where it belongs. Okay.
What about Mary Lou?
Anything else you want me to rant about? All right. So, this is yet another installment in my 5,000 movie tour of geeky exploitation films. I do this with the cooperation of the American Genre Film Archive, which is based in Austin, Texas. And that is an organization which saves, restores, and preserves films that the Motion Picture Academy does not give a fuck about. And tonight, we are honoring two films that absolutely nobody wanted to make, and nobody wanted to support them once they came out, and yet they survived, and they thrived, and they live on today in theaters like this one, where we all have really bad taste. And if you don't want your friends to know where you're going, you say you're going to a genre film festival, right? The idea of a genre film festival that's a relatively recent term. I don't even like the term. I mean, Gone with the Wind is a genre film. It's from the genre called Antebellum South movies that are so long they have to put a bathroom break in the middle. But when I first started reviewing movies back in the 80s, I was reviewing genre films, but they were considered disposable trash, beneath the contempt of most critics. So I'm happy to see that we are now bringing glory to guys who at one time would have been considered degenerate hacks. Not that I have anything against degenerate hacks. Some of my best friends are degenerate hacks. But what I most miss about the outlaw exploitation era, because that's what I call them, exploitation films, 70s and the 80s, is the great titles. The Night Evelyn Came Out of the Grave. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And At Midnight I Will Take Your Soul. And of course all the one-worders that just summed up perfectly what was about to happen on the screen, like Jaws, Maniac, Madman. And I watched many of those films at the drive-in. I was attracted by the lurid newspaper ads at the time. But young filmmakers today, they're ashamed to go there. They're ashamed to do that. Last year I went to this festival in Kansas City where I thought I had found one of my favorite titles of all time. Every time we meet for ice cream, your face explodes. Okay, cool title. I want to see that. But then I find out that the film was based on a novel, and the novel was called Every Time We Meet at the Dairy Queen, Your Whole Fucking Face Explodes. Which is so much better. I mean, you can meet at the Dairy Queen to do all kinds of things that don't involve ice cream. And so they actually took one of the most unique titles of the past 30 years and ruined it by trying to improve it. So my only advice to the young filmmakers in the audience, work on those titles, boys. I mean, nobody's going to see your poster. Nobody's going to see that. We're in the age of streaming. You're going to end up in an online menu. You got to sell it with the title. And the movie I've chosen to lead off with tonight exemplifies that principle. Because that movie has the intriguing title of Bubba Ho-Tep.
Woo! Woo!
Bubba meaning Southern good old boy, and Hotep meaning descended from Egyptian royalty. So it's written and directed by the great Don Coscarelli from the original novella by Joe R. Lansdale, who was a boy from East Texas. Now, I want you to imagine Don Coscarelli going into the office of a Hollywood studio executive in the late 90s when he first got the inspiration to make this movie. And the executive says, okay, make your pitch. What's the title? Bubba Ho-Tep. Okay, fine, we can change that title later, but what's the story about? Well, the two main characters are 68 years old and 82 years old. So if the movie mogul doesn't have an immediate heart attack, he says, okay, tell me about your elderly characters. Okay, 80% of the movie is in a depressing nursing home. Okay. We're going to art direct it with a lot of browns and dark greens to make it sad and oppressive. Okay. And the 68-year-old guy in the nursing home is Elvis. Oh, okay, so it's a musical. We're going to have some Elvis songs. Elvis songs are always good. Nope, we can't afford any Elvis songs. It's just Elvis without any songs. Okay, so what is Elvis going to do in this movie? Well, Elvis has a giant tumor on his dick that has to be drained once a day by exploding it like a pimple. Okay. And his only friend in the world is a black man who believes he's JFK, and that they kept him alive by putting sawdust in the back of his brain and dyeing his whole body black, and they control him from a secret room in the White House. And the executive at this point might say something like, okay, so there's this comic relief character who is crazy and is also a patient in this health facility. And Don would have to say, no, actually we want people to believe by the end of the movie that he really is President John F. Kennedy, even though he's not. But the other character is equally delusional and thinks he's Elvis. No, he's really Elvis. It's like he's like an Elvis impersonator. No, he's the real Elvis, believed by people in the nursing home to be an Elvis impersonator, because Elvis at one time in his life started impersonating an Elvis impersonator. And so what happens between these two guys? They make a plan to kill a redneck mummy. So there's also a mummy in this nursing home? No, there's this cowboy Egyptian mummy roaming through the woods of East Texas, sucking the souls out of weak people. Sucking their souls. Yes, sucking their souls out through their assholes. Okay, what else does this mummy do? Well, he uses the visitor's bathroom at the nursing home to carve obscene graffiti and hieroglyphics on the walls of the stalls while he's shitting out the residue of the people that he's eaten. So you're telling me this is sort of a raunchy comedy? No, we were planning on playing it straight. We do have one comic sequence about Elvis and JFK loving ding-dongs, but other than that, it's straightforward. Elvis and JFK fight a reanimated Egyptian mummy to the death with wheelchairs and walkers, historical paranormal docudrama. So, if we have an exceptionally polite Hollywood executive and Don manages to get this far in the conversation, the executive might say something like, so you're making grumpy old Ghostbusters? And Don would have to say, no, it's more like non-lethal weapon. The weapon of choice being a bedpan. And a walker. Elvis uses his walker to fight the mummy. And then the executive would have to say, please leave my office. Now, when most indie filmmakers get the please leave my office message, especially if they get it from everybody in town, that's the end of the project. But Don Coscarelli is not most indie filmmakers. Don Coscarelli, if you look at all his films, Don Coscarelli could best be described as the man whose plots can never be described. And believe me, I have tried. But more to the point, the plots can never be completely understood. Lots of filmmakers talk about, quote, movie magic. And what they mean is technical tricks to create illusions. Don Coscarelli traffics in a different kind of movie magic, meaning he puts you in emotional places that you didn't realize existed anywhere in this universe until he showed you what they look like. So there are many ways I could try to describe Bubba Hotep, which we're about to watch, and they would all be bullshit approximations. I could say it's a movie about aging, which it is. I could say it's a movie about regret, which it is. I could say it's a movie about redemption. I could say it's a movie about supernatural monsters that represent the fear in all of us. When Joe Lansdale wrote this story in the early 90s, he announced to a friend that he had written something that could never be filmed. Meaning, it didn't have a single commercial element in it. It had everything in it that Hollywood hates. Don Coscarelli proved him wrong. Don Coscarelli actually was told, get out of my office, by every movie executive in Hollywood, and then he decided to make the fucking movie anyway. It's probably Bruce Campbell's greatest performance. And even though Ossie Davis has a minor supporting role, it shows Ossie Davis at the height of his powers in his 57th year as an actor. He made his first movie in 1945 when he came out of the Army. And if the musical score by Brian Tyler doesn't make you tear up at some point, then you have had your soul